This is the D6 generation.
Dice are our vice.
Creating not too horrible content since 2008.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Oh, I think we're well past that.
D6G Hot Take.
Hey, welcome back to another Pip. Don't be fooled. Don't worry. It's not going to be just me through this entire moment in time. I recently returned from the science fiction literature convention BaltiCon in Baltimore, and it was a great time. I had a blast. We had a booth, Winged Hussar. Oh, and by the way, I've been saying that wrong for the last 10 years. It's not Winged Hussar, it's Winged Hussar. President and friend of the show and publisher, Vince Rospond, and friend of the show, Bill Anderson. And we hung out all weekend in our booth and really had a blast. Sold some books, signed some books. That was exciting. Talked to some folks. Discussed an interesting side light. Bill had one of his friends had just finished Legacy of Shadow, my science fiction space opera novel, and was intrigued that the aggressive alien race in his mind were cows. And that was very intriguing to me because I have a very strong picture in my mind about what they look like. They look nothing like cows, but it was very intriguing to me that my writing, which I'm describing these aliens the way I see them and the way I imagine they look, and they are looking quite different in other people's eyes. And I thought that was interesting. The con overall was very interesting. It was my second science fiction convention, my first being HonorCon many years ago, when my first book, Honor Among Outlaws, first came out. And I was a special, not an author's guest, but I was invited, and that was exciting back then. That was very specific, though, to David Webb's writing, Honor Among Enemies, and the whole Honorverse, things like that. So, and that's military sci-fi, and that's a slightly different fandom, is what I learned. The intriguing thing, one of the intriguing things about BaltiCon to me was there was a mask mandate, which was odd. As many of you know, between my parents and myself, I've been in and out of hospitals and other medical facilities over the past year, and become quite friendly with many medical professionals. And the last medical facility locally in New Hampshire that required masks canceled that mandate over a month ago. So, much to the excitement of most of those medical professionals that I know and became friendly with. Although not all, of course, and everybody has their opinion, and that's totally fine. But this is the first time in a very long time I had to wear a mask, and I found that intriguing. Although not everywhere. You were required to wear a mask in some places and not in others. I guess the size of the room was an indicating factor, but then by Sunday they canceled that policy. So not sure what was going on. It's very difficult. I learned it was a very intriguing, interesting sort of confluence of items for me because, of course, during the pandemic, there weren't any conventions. So I wasn't out meeting and greeting and smiling at people and getting to know them and roping them in and describing what we do and what I like to do and things like that. And then the pandemic was over and I didn't have to do that, with a mask on. I was doing that again. I was out and about and talking to people and enjoying those interactions once again. And then in Baltimore, it turned out I had to do both. I was doing my whole spiel, but I was doing it with a mask on, 2 people with masks on. And that was, it was interesting. It was different. It was difficult, very difficult. But it worked out okay and met a lot of really interesting people and had a really good time. Like I said, Vince and Bill and I had a great weekend, had some good meals, had some good drinks, had a lot of laughs, welcomed a lot of people to our booth. And over the weekend, I got to know a lot of the authors who were around us. So if you go to these conventions, which I highly recommend, they're all over the place. They're literally all over the place. And if you like reading science fiction and you're always looking for new books, this is a great place to go. A great place to go. These conventions are, like I said, they're all over the place. There's BosCon in Boston. There's Confluence in Pittsburgh. There's PhilCon in New Jersey. There's this one called SMOFCon in Providence, Rhode Island, which is actually a convention about throwing conventions. So if you're interested in starting a convention, you could go there. You could Google any number of local conventions, and many of them are going to have some interesting guests. John Scalzi, one of my favorite authors, was at BaltiCon. I didn't meet him. I never saw him, actually. There were a bunch of others that were noteworthy. But what I'm actually referring to is the vendor halls, and at BaltiCon there were 3. There were 2 that were kind of like off to the side. We were in one of those, and then there was a large central atrium area that was more of like a flea market-y crafts fair sort of thing. But there were a lot of booths there too, and you'll find a lot of authors, usually local authors, smaller publishers, boutique publishers, some self-published, but mostly boutique publishers. And you get to talk to them directly. You get to ask them any question you want. How did they get into writing? What's their process like? What are their books like? And as over the course of the weekend, I was talking to all the people that were around us. We had one lady who I never thought to interview because I was kind of focused on writing. She had a 3D print booth that had printed all kinds of amazing things that I didn't know you could do with a 3D printer. She had like articulated dragons that printed articulated. So literally she's got it programmed in and her 3D printer goes to work, and it must have been a huge 3D printer because some of these things were really, really big. And when they came out, they're multicolored. She's printing in multicolored resins, and when they came out, they were like fully articulated toys. So like you would hold them up and the tails would wag and wobble, and that was just amazing to me. There were a lot of bookstores, a couple, not a lot, but a couple places, including Wing Tassar, who is now teamed up with On Gaming. So they've got part of their booth is always hobby, and they had a lot of they had some X-Wing, we had some Star Wars Legion, we had some really older games, Conflict 47, things like that. And then there was a couple others, other booths that were featured, along those lines. But most of the booths were either artists or authors. And so I started walking around and I started chatting with the authors, and I started to realize that this would probably make some really cool content. And I didn't think about it until the second of the last day. And so that night I downloaded a recorder onto my phone and then went back to a lot of these folks and went to them for the first time. For a lot of others, especially in the other vendor hall with writers. And I just wanted to sit down and chat with them for a little bit. And so I think I got some really good content. I think I got some really good introductions. A lot of really, really interesting people. John L. French, for instance, writes a whole bunch of different kinds of books, and I got a cool interview with him. He was a CSI officer in Baltimore, which I probably could have done without knowing that there had been 2 murders in the last few years in the parking garage where we left our car, but, that's neither here nor there. So talking to John was great. Talked to some comic book producers, some guys who wrote comic books. A couple of these people are also amazing artists. They do their own art. And so it was just really fascinating. It was also in the heart of the Baltimore waterfront region, which is where my very first big gaming convention experience was, Games Day in 1999, where I won a bronze Golden Demon for my Divine Wind Space Marine chapter squad. And so that was sort of my introduction to that side of the hobby also, which was very, very cool. And I have very vivid memories of most of that weekend, including swimming in a fountain that I think no longer exists, a big whole fountain complex on the waterfront. And I think it's all built up now, and I'm pretty sure there's a mall there. It really kind of struck home. In my head, 1999 Games Day was, maybe 10 years ago. Yeah, maybe, because I'm really bad at math. I had to remind myself that was 24 years ago. And the waterfront, although a lot of it is the same, well, a lot of it is not the same. So driving by the convention center was awesome because I remembered very vividly, again, all kinds of amazing, cool things that happened there that Games Day and the next couple of Games Days, because we went down a few times. But a lot of it has changed, obviously. And the BaltiCon was actually in the Renaissance Baltimore Harbor Place Hotel, which is a beautiful hotel right across the street from the waterfront. And so that was exciting. I hadn't been in there. We had stayed at a slightly less expensive, I think, a Days Inn up the street. Karen and Reese went with me, so that was fun. That made the drive down and the drive back a lot easier and a lot more entertaining. Reese loves just going anywhere and staying in hotels and experiencing new places, and Karen loves to do that sort of thing with him also, as do I. But, I was, at the booth, manning the booth, as we say. And so they took scooters and went all over the place, and they went to the aquarium, which is a world-class aquarium, which is interesting because we grew up, close to Boston, and the New England Aquarium is a world-class aquarium. Also, one of the major attractions at the New England Aquarium are the penguins, who are pretty much all over the place. There's the center of the aquarium is a big penguin habitat. So Karen was quite upset when she went to the Baltimore Aquarium and they didn't have any penguins. So they went all over the place. They had a really good time. We had some really good meals with them. We had one great meal at Phillips right on the waterfront, where Bill and Vince and myself and Karen and Reese all had a really good time and introduced Reese to crab dip and crab cakes. At 12, he's really starting to kind of expand his palate, which is exciting. So we had a blast. We had a really, really, really good time. And ultimately, I'm really, really glad that I went, and I'm really glad that I met all of these neat, interesting people. And I hope that you find them interesting as well. So without further ado, I am now going to introduce you to 3 very interesting people who may have written something that you just might enjoy listening to. I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed talking to them. See you in a bit.
Talking with authors today at BaltiCon, and now I'd like to talk to John L. French. John, how you doing?
Oh, pretty good. You?
I'm doing great. How's the con going for you so far?
It's doing well.
Okay.
Doing well.
And you're from the area, are you not?
Right. I live in Northeast Baltimore.
Okay.
So this is my home con.
Oh, great, awesome. So home court advantage.
Yes. Well, I hope so.
And tell me a little bit about you and your writing. You've got a whole booth here with a bunch of different books, which looks great.
In my booth, I have about 35 books. All of which I've written, edited, or contributed to.
Okay. And what
some more at home.
Okay. And what would you say if you had to lock it into a vague sense of a genre?
Okay. I started out as a crime writer.
Okay.
And later was invited into anthologies like H.P. Lovecraft related material and zombies. And gradually was invited, I gradually fell into science fiction, fantasy, pulp, and horror.
Okay.
But primarily I'm a crime writer.
Okay.
My background is I'm now retired, but I was a crime scene investigator for the Baltimore City Police Department.
So CSI there.
For over 40 years.
Okay, and is that was the inspiration for those early books?
My very first story came when I thought of what I believed to be a really good ending to a mystery story. And so I wrote the story, and to my surprise, it was published by a small magazine called Hard Boiled, created by Wayne Dundee, and was continued by Gary Levisi.
Okay.
And I got good feedback from that, and I started writing more stories. And I was fortunate enough to have a couple stories published in Alfred Hitchcock's Mystery Magazine. And I just, went on from there. Once I had a good friend of mine, C.J. Henderson, who's unfortunately passed on, advised me to write the stories all about the same character. That way, when I had enough of the stories, I could put it together in a book.
Yeah.
And I did, and that was one of my first books, was Past Sins, which was the title of the very first story I wrote. And it's all about a crime scene investigator who becomes a private eye.
Okay.
And at the end, he has to decide what kind of person he's going to be. So the idea of sins kind of resonates with the book. And I went on to create a character for another small press magazine called Frank Devlin, who was known as the Devil of Harbor City, because he was basically assigned by the police commissioner of Harbor City to clean up crime, whatever he had to.
Okay.
Well, should I dress as a bat or lurk in the shadows? Well, criminals are a superstitious and cowardly lot, but I want them to be afraid of a crazy cop with a license to kill. And that's that's the theme of the thing.
Yeah.
They came out in short stories, and when Frank Devlin's story was told, I adapted it into a novel, and it came out as The Devil of Harbor City, and it has seen three different publishers, and is still going strong.
Nice. Okay.
And I recently revisited that era of Harbor City. With a book coming out. It takes place just after the devil leaves, and it's called The Wages of Sin. Jericho Sin is sort of a unofficial man for hire. He's not licensed. People in trouble come to him, and he helps them however he can. And so and he's called the Scarecrow because of his appearance and because his uncle was called the Scarecrow, and he sort of inherited the name.
Okay.
And this all goes back to me when as a kid watching Disney's The Scarecrow of Romney Marsh, which I learned was based on a fiction series.
Oh, okay.
And the name of the Scarecrow was can't remember the first name, but his last name was Sin. He was Dr. Sin. So these are he's a literary descendant of the Scarecrow of Romney Marsh.
Oh, wow.
So
okay, nice. Tie it back in.
Yeah, so he's called the Scarecrow. He hates the name, but he uses it because he uses it because it has an effect. Like,
Jericho Sin's not strong enough.
Well, it's basically he's known as the Scarecrow, and it's sort of like call some of your friends and ask them, tell them the Scarecrow is here. What should you do? And he makes a call, and he says I should cooperate or you'll throw me out a window. So that's
right. Okay, so he's building a rep.
He's got the street rep.
Yep.
And so, I also write paranormal investigation. I was asked to write a story for a Lovecraft anthology called Eldritch Blue, and I created Bianca Jones, a small woman who's a police detective in the world of large men. She has an attitude, and so it turns out it worked out very well. And again, CJ said you have your monster hunter.
Okay.
I wasn't in the anthology.
Yeah.
But I did come up with 3 volumes of stories about Bianca Jones, Here There Be Monsters, Monsters Among Us, and The Last Monster, which finishes her story. And 3 spin-off novels, or 3 spin-off books, 2 written with Patrick Thomas, and 1 is just a small collection of vampires in Baltimore.
Nice. That's cool.
And I've gotten into pulp with characters like the Nightmare, who's been described as the Shadow, if played by Brendan Fraser.
Okay.
And the Grey Monk.
Young Brendan Fraser or current Brendan Fraser?
The Mummy Brendan Fraser.
Okay.
The Mummy Brendan Fraser.
At his peak. Not that he's not great. He's winning awards now, so no shade.
Yeah. And the Grey Monk, which is set in more contemporary times. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. The Grey Monk believes he's the Lord's agent.
Okay.
So it's all. My father. I started with a fascination with the Shadow and the Green Hornet through my father, who would tell me about the radio shows he used to listen to. And on Sunday afternoons, they would repeat these shows. So we listened to the Green Hornet, and we listened to the Shadow. And later, when I got older, my father would find old Shadow paperbacks and bring them home to me, and I'd read them. So I'm very much a Shadow fan. And if I really, and this is basically the Nightmare and the Grey Monk are my homage to this character.
Yeah, which is a great side note to being an author is when you have something like that you love so much, you can continue experiencing it. Yeah.
And I don't write about the Shadow because I don't want to be sued by
No,
Nash.
of course not.
Yeah.
But the DNA is there.
Yes, the DNA is there. They're sort of cousins.
Yeah, excellent. That's great. Is there anything else that you'd like to mention to the listeners or?
Well, I am an editor of eSpec Books.
Okay.
And they put out very nice anthologies. The latest one I've edited is Grease Monkeys, which is a diesel punk anthology.
Okay.
Instead of steam, it's fossil fuels.
Yep.
And I'm also, through eSpec, I'm also involved in Systema Paradoxa, which is a series of cryptid novellas. Cryptids are creatures that are believed to exist, but for which there is no scientific
evidence that they
So we're talking Bigfoot, Mothman, Goatman.
Okay.
And my first one, which was the first in the Systema Paradoxa series, was the Snallygaster. The Snallygaster is an aerial predator that is believed to haunt Frederick County, Maryland. And I also threw in the Dueo, because that is an earthbound predator in the same area. They don't like each other. And it turns out that one of the main characters there is Theodore Sin, whose nephew later becomes Jericho Sin in Harbor City.
Okay, a.k.a.
The Scarecrow.
The Scarecrow.
They're both called the Scarecrow.
That's
where he got it.
Oh, that's where he got it. Oh, that's nice.
And Danielle,
that's a great tie-in.
Danielle Ackley McPhail asked me to write another one for the now it's no longer around, but it was for the ChessieCon.
Okay.
And so of course it had to be Chessie, the Chesapeake Bay sea serpent. And I had some fun with that.
Yeah.
And of course Theodore Sin shows up in that.
Oh, nice.
And sometime in 2024 there will be the third and last Theodore Sin book. It will feature the Dueo, and it will be called Daylight Comes. And for all so for all you fans of his music, Dueo, Daylight Comes. That's where the title comes.
You've got it all.
Yeah. So and I'm always looking for new subjects to write.
Yeah.
I edit for both Padwolf and for eSpec.
Okay.
And I'm always looking for the next thing. Oh, and I have to give a shout out to Bold Venture Press. They are publishing Wages of Sin.
Okay.
And they also invited me into their Zorro anthologies.
Oh, really?
There's 2 in Zorro anthologies. I have written for both. And the thrill of a lifetime, I write Zorro.
That's great.
If I can't do Batman and I can't do the Shadow, at least I can write Zorro.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's fantastic. Well, thank you very much for sitting down with me, John. I appreciate it, and good luck. I hope the weekend continues to go well for you.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. And now I'm here talking to author Jonathan Soule. Jonathan, how are you?
I'm doing good, thank you.
How's your weekend?
It's going pretty good so far.
Okay.
I'm enjoying the con.
And are you local or did you travel?
I'm from D.C.
D.C.?
Yeah,
oh, that's great.
a little bit of travel.
Yeah, well, my family just went to D.C. in February. We loved it. We had a really good time. Apropos of nothing.
Right.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about what you have going here in the con. You've got a couple different things on in your booth.
Yeah, I'm a science fiction and fantasy author, and here I just put out my first science fiction novel, a space opera novel called The Society. And this is a comic book I did a few years ago, an urban fantasy comic. I wrote and illustrated that. But
you did the illustrations also?
I did. That was more of a passion project to get a comic out.
Yeah.
Primarily I do prose fiction.
Okay.
Yeah.
And tell me a little bit about The Society. That's the novel that you're referring to.
Yeah, it's set in the near future. There's an interstellar civilization known as the Society, and it's made up of a group of different races, hominin races. So they're cousins to Homo sapiens, to us. And Earth has just discovered them, and it starts right at that point where Earth's first embassy is going out into the Society to see if it's right for us. Because on some levels it feels too much like a utopia. It seems too good to be true. And
People
so they're
more suspicious by nature.
Right, exactly. And there's some things that happen when they get out there. One of the neuroscientists gets involved in a political plot, and she believes some people have copied her memories without her knowledge. And so that brings in some political intrigue. And then another delegate is stationed on one of the biological starships, and they're starting to see that one of the primitive planets in the galaxy looks like it's starting to be exploited, and they're not sure if it's the Society or another group, and they're trying to get to the bottom of that.
Okay, so there's multiple plots going on.
Yeah, there are 2 main characters. Yeah, and
possible flaws with the Society.
Exactly, and it stretches from our solar system to a few thousand light years away. Yeah.
And this is your first book.
This is my first book.
So how long have you been working on it?
This was overall about 6 years.
6 years.
Yeah, it took time off during the pandemic and life stuff got in there.
As it does.
Exactly.
Yep. What kept you writing? I have a lot of listeners who want to be writers.
Right.
And my advice is always you have to keep writing.
Exactly.
So when things kind of bogged down, what kept you working on the Society that brought you to this point, which is really wish fulfillment?
Right.
You've got here, you have your books and hardcovers and and trade paperbacks. And actually, you look.
I got the
three
mass
different
market size
sizes.
too. Yeah. Well, that's because I grew up reading that mass market size science fiction novel. So I only do that for cons because it's just not cost effective to put it online as well. But what kept me going is that my earliest memories are wanting to write. From being a kid laying on the floor, just drawing and writing stories. And I noticed whatever I did in life, whatever jobs I had, I always came back to writing just for me. So I one day decided, when I saw that the Kindle and people could self-publish, decided that I can actually do it. And I had some short stories published in smaller press zines, but this was my first novel, and just constantly doing it, like you said, writing. Even if you need to write every day, but I didn't do that. But I thought about it.
None of us do it, but we all say we need to.
I thought about it every day, so that just kept me inspired. Just the joy of doing it.
That's awesome. Now, the society, I assume that's set up like you could now continue writing in that universe. You did a lot of foundation work, but now you can kind of
a whole lot of universe building going in there. And the first novel, I tried to keep it mostly looking like the journey of us going out into space and seeing how big everything is going to be. But there'll be 3 novels. I try to keep it so it's kind of self-contained, so you get a sense of closure with this novel, but it's definitely open-ended to see what's going on.
That's my favorite way to do it.
Right, because I know it might take me, it'll take me shorter time, but it'll be another year before the second one comes out.
And so do you have it all, so I talked to a bunch of writers, and I tend to, I'll outline one novel at a time, and the rest of it's in my head, which isn't great. It's not the way I would recommend it. Do you have the trilogy kind of mapped out someplace you can look at it, or is it mostly in your head?
Taped on my wall. Actually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, actually, when I started, it was going to be a lot more books because I thought they were going to be shorter. So I was going to do a longer series of shorter books.
Okay.
And then that just didn't work out with all the viewpoint characters that I wanted to do in one novel. So I made it one longer novel. So it's about 125,000 words.
Okay. Oh, wow.
And reduced it to a trilogy. But the whole series is mapped out, and I had the timelines and everything. And I printed out the little Bible and have it all taped to my wall, so when I'm writing, I can remember.
That's okay. So it looks like you're trying to solve a serial killer crime at home.
Right. Yes. Got to keep track of things. All the technologies, all the different alien races, and everything.
That's fantastic. You just can't move.
Right. Yeah.
That's awesome. And so this is completely separate from that. The urban fantasy. What's going on here in case people are interested in this stuff?
Well, there's a type of urban fantasy stories like trying to think of some authors like Jim Butcher or Patricia Briggs that write those fantasy stories set in contemporary times. And this is a young American guy who's hiding out in Japan because he found a supernatural object, and a lot of people are trying to track him down. So he's hiding out in Japan, but he still can't help the fact that he likes to help people. So he gets caught up helping somebody actually save their belly button. There's a myth over there that during thunderstorms you should sleep on your stomach, or this guy Kaminari-sama will come and steal your belly button. And I lived over there for a while, and I always found it interesting, and I kind of put it into the plot of this story.
That sounds very interesting, and the artwork is great. I mean, this could be right out of a sci-fi game cover, kind of thing. That's awesome. And when did you do this? A while ago, or
that was about in 2016, I think.
Okay.
That passion project right before I started writing the novel, and just wanted to kind of get a comic book out.
That's fantastic.
And then when I came and decided to do this, I realized, I still have issues left. I can bring them and
multitask.
Exactly.
It's always nice. That's great. Is there anything else you'd like to say to people, or anything else you'd like to mention about your work, or where you think you're headed, or where you want to go?
Well, not just science fiction, but also fantasy. So I'm kind of taking a break, the science fiction, and write a little fantasy, then go back to the science fiction.
Keep it fresh.
Yes, exactly. Because that's what I love to read. I love to read both equally. It just depends on my mood. So
absolutely.
It's the same with writing. But I am committed to finishing this and getting it out in the next couple of years.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for sitting down with me. I appreciate it. And good luck for the rest of the weekend, Jonathan.
Thank you.
I'm talking to Michael Watts, and you're here at BaltiCon. Michael, how is the con going for you so far?
Pretty good so far. Yep.
So, okay. And so tell me what it is you've got going. There's comic books here. So is that, like, what are you doing here?
Yeah, well, basically, I'm selling my original comic, The Legend of the Crusaders.
Okay.
Written by me, drawn by others.
Okay. That's how I do it.
Yeah. I'm also helping to promote another comic book called Jonathan Quackup of the planet Weralt.
Okay.
Made by a friend of mine in California. A guy I've never met named Ray of Raytunes.
Okay.
Raytunes.net.
Okay, Raytunes.net.
Yes.
And so tell me a little bit about your comic book.
Well, The Legend of the Crusaders takes place on an alternate Earth.
Okay.
You have all this George Lucas style technology, but you still also have magic.
Okay.
Yeah. And one of the things man has done now, we've finally learned to colonize the galaxy.
Okay.
We've been able to mass produce, FTL, faster than light technology. So by the time the story starts, man has pretty much colonized the galaxy for thousands of years. And our main character is from one of these colony worlds called Elysium.
All right.
He's a soldier. He's sent to Earth by his government to warn us of this big, impending doom that will consume the entire galaxy.
Okay.
And his mission is to recruit an army that will save us all.
All right.
The big catch is he's the only guy from Elysium that can serve in this army.
Oh, that seems like it would be a problem.
Yeah. Everyone else has to come from someplace else.
Okay. So he has to travel the galaxy and recruit an army? Okay. Yep. What is the mechanism for he's the only one from Elysium that can do it?
The Elysians, his people, they have what are called the Holy Writs. They're their equivalent of the Bible. Because it just says so in the Holy Writs.
Okay, all right, yeah. So it's part of the religion that they can. Okay,
yeah.
And can you give a little idea, like who's the big bad guy, or is that not revealed yet? Or would it spoil it?
I think I can get away with telling you this.
Okay.
The big bad guy is an industrialist.
Okay.
Who owns companies all across the galaxy.
So he's an enemy from within, sort of thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And does he have an army that's like? So how does the conflict? How is it shaping up in the story?
Well, I mean, I don't want to give away too much.
No, yeah, don't. No. My inclination is to ask for the whole story. So don't do that.
Okay.
So it looks like you've got three. Is it three so far?
Three so far.
Yep.
My plan is to make a 5-issue story arc.
Okay. And how long have you been working on this?
Oh, I've been working on this for years. I first got this idea back in college.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
And what do you do? Do you do another job, or is this kind of like what you're doing full time?
I'm a full-time commercial driver.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. And you work on this at night, and that's gotta be hard to schedule.
Work on it in the break room between trips.
So it's a work of love, absolutely. Okay. And is this your first outing, this con, or have you had a few of these for a while?
I've been to other cons. I've been to Hampton Comic Con. Clandestine Comics hosts a convention every 6 weeks.
Oh, really? Oh, yes. That's great.
Yes.
And are you from the area then?
Yeah. I'm from Baltimore, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the listeners about what you're working on here, what you have in the future?
In addition to making The Legend of Crusaders like an ongoing series, I do have other projects coming down the pipeline. One's like a more traditional superhero type story called The Three.
Okay.
Go to backtozero.net for more information.
Backtozero.net is where we're going to send you for any more information on this stuff.
Right.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Michael. Thanks for sitting down with me. It's been really nice to meet you.
Great. Thank you.
Good. Have a good rest of the con.
You too.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I'm back with Patrick Thomas, and for another conversation with an author here at BaltiCon. Patrick, how you doing?
I'm good, Craig.
Okay,
thank you for having me.
It was great to meet you. So we're all here in this the main book area of the dealer's room here, And so you have quite the display going on. How many books do you have here, would you say?
I've written over 50 books at this point, and I've been in over 60 anthologies. I would have to count. Probably over 50 books that are on the table.
Okay, and did you build this yourself? I
designed it myself.
Okay.
I had a handyman that did some work for us. I'm like, could you build? And he's like, yes. And actually, he did a great job. He added the idea of putting the banner stand on the side.
Post, yep.
And he, managed to. I came up with the idea because this extends the table far enough forward so I get 2 books in front.
It looks very much like a Parisian book dealer cart to me.
Yeah.
That's why you've got these. They've got little boxes that open up during the day along the Seine, and that's what it reminded me of. So it's great. I wish this wasn't an audio format. We could show like the whole. It looks like a little bookstore that's just totally unfolded.
Exactly, but then I'd have to wear pants.
That's true. Thank you for that. Yes, yes. Okay, so Patrick, tell me about yourself.
I'm an author. I write fantasy, science fiction, horror, mystery, most humor, and a lot of my work. And I also write a Dear Cthulhu advice column. So I guess technically I dish out advice on behalf of the great old one.
Where could people go to find your column?
Actually, for the most part, it's in the collections. It was in a bunch of different magazines, most of which, being small press, have gone the way of small press magazines. But it is on the radio every month on a weekly show. It's a monthly segment called Destiny's the Voice of Science Fiction. It's on WUSB radio station in Stony Brook, Long Island. If you plug in Destiny's the Voice of Science Fiction, they do put it up the week after as a podcast.
Oh, wow. That's
so
cool.
they can listen to that. There are 6 collections, soon to be 7. Some of the magazines might still have some of the letters up on the websites because some of them, they did it as a segment for the magazine itself. But I keep meaning to try and see if I can do it like a weekly comic where you put a letter up instead of the comic kind of thing.
Oh, wow. That'd be neat.
Time, we all have wonderful, great ideas and only so many, free hours in the week.
With 50 bucks under your belt, you would know that, I think, more than most. So tell me how you got started as a writer.
Well, let's see. You said you wanted my original story.
Yeah, your origin story. Here we go.
I was bitten by a radioactive planet which flew in my window and inspired me to dress up like an exploding planet. Yes. I've made up stories since I was a kid, and in high school I started doing a little bit of writing, wrote for the school paper, was an editor. In college, had a chance to submit to a couple magazines that did poetry, and literary magazines had a couple stories published, and just kept at it. And like many writers, I had that short story that turned into my first novel. After several years, that got published, and I've just kept going.
Okay, great. And
so it keeps the voices in my head a little quiet.
And I've heard that. That's good. Yeah, my voices just won't be quiet, but it's nice that it'll help you out that way.
Yeah, if they can only do some of the typing.
And that's right. So where's your inspiration come from? Where are these stories popping out, or is it all just the voices in your head?
I think for me at least, you see inspiration or you get ideas everywhere. Someone will say something and you'll go, ooh, that could be good. I have a children's book coming out with Lee O'Connell. I did the writing, she did the art, called Fuchsia, the Mermaid Who Loves Pink. And John and I were riffing this morning, and he said, the fuchsia is bright, and I'm like, the future is pink. And I'm like, okay, that could be a good tagline for like an ad for the book, but like that in particular were stories I used to tell my kids when they were little, about a mermaid who went around painting everything pink, and then the next book is going to be Fuchsia and the Three Pigs, which was something. And even I write the kids' books as Patrick T. Phibbs. I have a book. It's the second book will be out. It'll be a series then of the Baby Bear Mysteries. Not Baby Bear, he hates that. But when I used to tell my kids stories, I would change them around. My wife would, but that's not the right story. I'm like, that's my story. And I always felt Goldilocks was a juvenile delinquent because she breaks into the house, she steals their food, she wrecks their furniture, and then she squats in their house. So in this, I actually took that and ran with it, and he captures the burglar who runs a burglar ring, Goldilocks. And because of that, people think he can solve mysteries, so he sets up a detective agency, as kids are wont to do, in his treehouse, with his next-door neighbor Rapunzel and his best friend Not-So-Bad Wolf, who you may have heard of his dad, Big Bad Wolf. He's in prison for this insurance scam where he knocked down these 3 pigs' houses for the money. And they get hired by their first client, the Little Mermaid, because she didn't get asked to prom, so she didn't get her voice back, from this water witch who flies around town, not on a broomstick, but on a jet ski. So
that's very subversive on all these fantasies and fairy tales.
But part of it came from
the kids.
My kids' bedtime stories.
You've got lucky kids, I would have to say.
Well, I'm a lucky dad with that. And actually, what was nice is when I wrote those, they were young enough to still be read to. So my first 2 middle readers, they got, I read them to them when they were done. And, I was able to get feedback from them, what they liked, what they laughed at, what they didn't.
Oh, that's awesome.
So.
And when we were talking earlier, there's like a core series of books that you have that.
My main series is the Murphy's Law series, and there's the Murphy's Law universe. It's about a bar in Manhattan that's owned by a leprechaun. He bought the place with his pot of gold. So Rainbow's lead people in trouble to the bar where they can get help from people like Hercules, who's the bouncer, Dionysus, kind of wine and some other things, who's one of the bartenders, and various people of myth, legend, and everyday New Yorkers come in. Stuff happens. 9 books summarized really quickly. And then there's 2 books that take that series 30 years in the future, where they go out into space, not in starships, but barships.
Okay.
And then several characters from the universe get their own spin-offs. So there's over 20 books in the universe.
Oh, that's awesome. And for people who are looking for if you like this author, you said there's a couple authors that you feel are kind of like their style or their themes are rolled up into that series.
Well, actually, I think I'd use David Sherman, he just passed away, was a wonderful military science fiction writer, although he did some vampire books and some traditional military type books. Gave me the best blurb ever. He said something to the effect, if you take Gaiman's American Gods and mix it with Robinson's Callahan's Crosstown Saloon and put it on Pratchett's Discworld, you get an idea of Thomas's Murphy's Law. Best blurb ever.
Yeah.
So he, I claim, I don't claim to be as good as any of those 3 writers.
But you know what?
Someone else said that. I have met all 3, and they're all very nice people.
Oh, did you? Oh, that's
Terry
lucky.
Pratchett's passed.
Right.
But I have met Spider Robinson and I were supposed to be on a panel together. He was late coming in, unfortunately, but I did get to talk to him afterwards. I've got to hang out. I have a fun Neil Gaiman story. I got to hang out with him at Book Expo, like ages. I've been doing this a long time ago, before cell phones.
Yep.
And just hung out with him and a couple other people. He was just nicest guy. And Frank Miller was in the mix. And then a woman came up and asked Frank Miller and Neil Gaiman, like she was talking to us. And I was there doing a signing in a different part, not quite the level of Frank Miller and Neil Gaiman. And she's like, "Can I get a picture?" And I stepped out of the way. She's like, "No, I want you too." I'm like, "Oh." So I'm in the middle. My arm is around Frank Miller and Neil Gaiman. There are, we smile. It's like a film camera, or maybe it was a digital camera even back then. I gave this woman my name, my phone number, my address, and I'm like, "I will pay you money for this photo."
Yeah.
And she never got back to me.
Oh, wow.
So,
but it's out there somewhere.
Yeah, but it was kind of neat.
That's awesome.
And I went to a signing that was before Terry Pratchett became as huge as he became in America. He was already, the best author in Britain.
Right.
And it was in a store called Science Fiction Mysteries and More, which was wonderful to me when I was starting out. And he was there for like 3 hours, and there were probably only a little more than a dozen of us.
Oh, really?
And got to just hang out with him and talk for like 2-3 hours.
That's a dream.
It was wonderful. And what was neat is, when I brought books to have him sign, he had stamps like with Unseen University. And so the different offices, he would sign the book, he'd take the stamp out,
and
he'd put
great.
the stamp.
Yeah.
And it was so cool. So I said, obviously I still have this.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I would hope. Oh, that's great. Well, thank you for sitting down with me for a little bit. Is there anything else you'd like to add before
I can talk for... I don't want to take up all your bandwidth.
You're a talker.
Yeah, I don't want to take up all your bandwidth.
That's okay. Well, thank you. And if anybody wants to look for you, what's the website? This is all going to be in the show notes also.
Excellent. We'll have them count to 10. And then, patthomas.net.
Okay.
DearCthulhu.com goes to the same website. And Patrick T. Phibbs for the
children's books. Okay, great.
.com.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And there you go for the first batch of BaltiCon interviews. I hope you enjoyed them. I hope they were enlightening. Little nuggets here or there about people's processes and journeys. And I will have a few more of these next time. I think I've got 3 more. I think I lied at the beginning of this segment and said there were 3 in this one. And as it turned out, I had 7 total, which is great. So if you are interested in any of these, please check out the show notes where links will be provided to all these different authors and their various media presences. And have a good night.
And that was the D6G Hot Take.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by emailing us at info@the d6generation.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. Thanks for listening and happy gaming.